Welcome to World History Z, the channel where the past comes alive. From ancient empires to modern revolutions, we explore the stories that shaped our world. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and join us on this journey through history. The dark history of North Korea, from formation to the present day. North Korea is often described as the world's most secretive nation, a place where time seems frozen, trapped in a Cold War nightmare while the rest of the planet has moved on. Its story is unlike any other, a tale of war, ideology, extreme isolation, and the suffering of millions. To truly understand this enigmatic country, we must explore its dark and complex history, one shaped by colonialism, conflict, dictatorship, and absolute control. During this journey, we will uncover the pivotal events, hidden truths, and dark turning points that shaped North Korea into the secretive, isolated Hermit Kingdom it is today. A nation divided, the birth of North Korea. The origins of North Korea can be traced back to the aftermath of World War II. For 35 years, Korea had endured the brutal grip of Japanese colonial rule. When Japan surrendered in 1945, the Korean Peninsula suddenly became a pawn in the emerging Cold War struggle between the Soviet Union and the United States. In a rushed and poorly considered decision, American officials divided the peninsula along the 38th parallel, with the Soviets taking control of the north and the Americans occupying the south. In the chaos of post-war reconstruction, the Soviets installed a little-known Korean communist named Kim Il-sung as their chosen leader in the north. Born as Kim Song-ju in 1912, in what was then Japanese-occupied Korea, Kim Il-sung's early life was marked by hardship, war, and rebellion. His family fled to Manchuria when he was still a child, escaping brutal Japanese colonial rule. There, Kim grew up amidst revolutionary ideas and the promise of Korean liberation, a dream that would define his life and goals as a firm and brutal dictator of what would later become North Korea. As a young man, Kim Il-sung joined communist guerrilla groups that waged guerrilla warfare against the Japanese occupiers. Whether Kim was a brilliant guerrilla leader or simply an opportunist placed in the right spot by fate remains debated among historians. What is certain is that after the defeat of Japan in World War II, Kim's fortunes changed dramatically. In 1945, Korea was divided up and split along the 38th parallel. The Soviet Union occupied the north and the Americans the south. To lead this new People's Republic in the north, the Soviets chose Kim Il-sung, a loyal communist who seemed to have the right blend of ambition, revolutionary credentials, and malleability. But Kim had plans of his own. The Korean War, a forgotten catastrophe. The Korean War stands as one of the defining and most tragic conflicts of the 20th century, a brutal clash of ideologies, ambition, and superpower rivalry that forever split the Korean Peninsula in two. At the center of this war was Kim Il-sung, the fiery and determined leader of North Korea. Kim dreamed of unifying all of Korea under communist rule. Convinced that the South was weak and supported by promises of aid from both Joseph Stalin and Mao Zedong, Kim launched a full-scale invasion of South Korea on June 25, 1950. It was a bold and reckless gamble, one that would ignite a conflict involving the world's greatest powers. North Korean forces swept rapidly southward, capturing Seoul within days. But the tide turned when United Nations forces, led by the United States and General Douglas MacArthur, staged a daring landing at Incheon, cutting off the North's supply lines and forcing a retreat. As UN forces pushed deep into the north, China entered the war in support of Kim Il-sung, unleashing a massive counter-offensive that drove the conflict into a bloody stalemate. For 3 grueling years, the war raged up and down the peninsula. Entire cities were reduced to rubble. Millions of civilians were killed or displaced. Yet, after all the suffering, the final battle lines settled close to where they had begun, along the 38th parallel. In July 1953, an armistice was signed, not a peace treaty, but a ceasefire that froze the conflict in place. To enforce this uneasy truce, the Demilitarized Zone, DMZ, was established, a 250-kilometer strip of land separating North and South Korea, bristling with landmines, fences, and soldiers. Ironically, this zone of peace remains one of the most heavily fortified borders in the world. Kim Il-sung emerged from the war not as the leader of a unified Korea, but as the absolute ruler of a deeply isolated North, a regime that would become synonymous with repression and secrecy. His dream of unification by force filled, but the legacy of his ambition lives on in the tense silence of the DMZ, where the shadow of war lingers to this day. The rise of the cult of personality. In the years after the war, Kim Il-sung began reshaping North Korean society in his own image. Kim Il-sung transformed North Korea into a one-man dictatorship. He crafted an unprecedented cult of personality, one that elevated him to near-divine status. Propaganda rewrote history to portray Kim as the heroic liberator of Korea, the man who single-handedly defeated both Japanese and American imperialism. In 1972, Kim was officially named President for life, cementing his role as the eternal father of the nation. This mythology permeated every aspect of life. His image hung in every home, school, and government office. Children were taught to adore him above all else, even their own families. The regime carefully erased any trace of dissent or alternative truth. Political purges, secret police, torture chambers, and massive prison camps became central features of society. Entire families were imprisoned, sometimes for generations, if even one member was accused of disloyalty. It is estimated that 100,000 or more people remain in these gulags to this day, suffering forced labor, starvation, and inconceivable cruelty. Total control, the Songbun system. Control in North Korea extended far beyond propaganda. Kim Il-sung instituted a rigid social classification system known as Songbun, a form of hereditary caste system. Every citizen was ranked based on their family's loyalty to the regime, dating back generations. There were three broad classes: the core, those deemed loyal; the wavering, those with questionable backgrounds; and the hostile, which included descendants of landlords, capitalists, Christians, and anyone suspected of disloyalty. Your Songbun determined where you could live, your education, your career prospects, even your access to food. One wrong move by a grandparent could doom an entire bloodline for decades. This system fostered a society of fear, silence, and conformity. Kim Il-sung ruled with an iron fist for decades, leaving the North Korean population struggling to survive. Little did they know, the future would not bring much fortune, even with Kim's predecessors, who would follow closely behind Kim's dark shadow. Famine and suffering, the Arduous March. After Kim Il-sung's death in 1994, his son Kim Jong-il inherited the throne of this dystopian kingdom. Kim Jong-il, the enigmatic and secretive second leader of North Korea, was born in 1941, although official state records claim 1942, a small but telling example of the myth-making that would define his life. According to North Korean propaganda, he was born on the sacred slopes of Mount Paektu, under a double rainbow and a bright new star in the sky, a miraculous birth meant to herald a destined ruler. In truth, he was likely born in a Soviet military camp near Khabarovsk, far from the Korean Peninsula, where his father, Kim Il-sung, was serving with Soviet forces during the final years of World War II. Kim Jong-il grew up in the shadow of power. As the son of Kim Il-sung, the man who would become the absolute ruler of North Korea, his life was shaped from the beginning by politics, ideology, and privilege. While ordinary North Korean children endured poverty and strict control, young Kim was raised in luxury, shielded from the harsh realities of the state his father was building. Almost immediately after receiving the reins of the nation from his father, North Korea was plunged into one of the worst famines of the late 20th century, known to historians as the Arduous March. The Arduous March remains one of the darkest and most tragic chapters in North Korea's history, a time of unimaginable suffering, fear, and silent death. Officially, it was called a march, suggesting hardship and endurance. In truth, it was a famine of devastating proportions. Between 1994 and 1998, following the death of Kim Il-sung and the rise of his son, Kim Jong-il, North Korea was plunged into economic collapse. A perfect storm of disaster struck the country. Years of flooding ruined fragile farmlands, mismanagement crippled industry, and the fall of the Soviet Union cut off vital aid and trade revenues. But the regime refused outside help, determined to maintain its image of self-reliance no matter the human cost. As the government hoarded resources for the military and elite, ordinary citizens were left to starve. Food rations dwindled to nothing. Desperate families ate grass, tree bark, and even sawdust to survive. Entire villages emptied as people fled in search of anything edible. In the countryside, bodies lay unburied along roadsides. In cities, orphaned children wandered the streets, thin, hollow-eyed, and abandoned. Estimates suggest that up to 2 million people perished, though the true number will never be known. And all the while, the government continued its parades, its propaganda, its illusion of strength, while its people withered away in silence. The Arduous March was more than a famine. It was a man-made disaster, a chilling reminder of what happens when absolute power values ideology over human life. Becoming a nuclear pariah. To compensate for years of economic weakness and diplomatic isolation, Kim Jong-il turned to nuclear weapons as a survival strategy. The regime's first nuclear test in 2006 shocked the world and confirmed fears that North Korea would become a dangerous, unpredictable nuclear state. International sanctions followed, deepening the country's isolation. Yet the regime proved resilient, using illicit means, arms sales, cybercrime, counterfeiting to fund its nuclear program. Within North Korea, the state security apparatus tightened its grip. Informants infiltrated every neighborhood. Citizens feared arrest for even the smallest infraction, such as watching a South Korean drama smuggled in on a flash drive. The young dictator, Kim Jong-un's rise. Kim Jong-il's sudden death in 2011 brought his youngest son, Kim Jong-un, to power. At only 27 years old, many experts believed the dynasty would collapse. Instead, Kim Jong-un moved swiftly and ruthlessly to consolidate power. He ordered the execution of his own uncle, a senior official, using anti-aircraft guns in a show of terror. His half-brother, living abroad, was assassinated with nerve agent in a Malaysian airport. These shocking moves demonstrated that the young Kim was both willing and capable of extreme violence to secure his rule. Under Kim Jong-un, the regime advanced its nuclear program at an alarming rate, successfully testing intercontinental ballistic missiles capable of reaching the United States. These developments alarmed the world, but only strengthened Kim's position at home. Life in modern North Korea today. North Korea remains frozen in a totalitarian nightmare. Most citizens have no access to the internet or foreign media. Speaking ill of the regime, even in private, can lead to imprisonment, torture, or execution. The country maintains vast prison camps where hundreds of thousands are believed to suffer forced labor, starvation, and inhumane abuse. These camps are hidden from view, but satellite images and defector testimony confirm their horrific existence. Yet cracks are forming. Black markets flourish despite government crackdowns. Foreign media, South Korean dramas, Western films, even pop songs are smuggled in, exposing some citizens to life beyond their borders. Quiet whispers of dissatisfaction hint at potential change, though any rebellion remains a distant, dangerous dream. The uncertain future. North Korea's future remains unclear. Will the regime collapse under its own weight? Will the dynasty give way to reform? Or will the Kim family rule into the next generation, maintaining their iron grip over a captive population? One thing is certain: North Korea is not like any other country. It is the last relic of a bygone age, a living monument to totalitarian control, state-sponsored fear, and relentless propaganda. As the world watches and waits, the fate of 25 million people hangs in the balance. The dark history of North Korea is a warning to the world, a reminder of what happens when absolute power goes unchecked. Its story is not over. The struggles, fears, and hopes of its people continue behind closed orders, unseen but not forgotten. What comes next for Kim Jong-un and North Korea, and at what cost to the millions trapped under his rule, men, women, and children who wake each day just trying to survive? The world can only hold its breath and wait. Thanks for watching World History Z, where the past meets the present. If you enjoyed this journey through history, make sure to like, subscribe, and hit the bell so you never miss a new story.